guys, what's going on? It's If You Have to Pick Three. I'm Matt.
And I'm Zach.
And if you haven't joined us for one of these before, essentially what we do here is we each come up with a top three list, and then we fight it out to find out who has the most entries in the ultimate top three list. Now this time we're doing something a little bit special. Zach, why don't you lay it on him? What are we doing?
Well, first, Matt, tell me, are you ready to feel old?
When am I ever ready to feel old?
Well, you're about to, because 2019, one of the greatest albums of all time, turns 50 years old.
That's some big shoes.
50.
But that's some big shoes
5,
to say one of the best
0.
of all time.
Well, guess what? Guess what album that is?
What album is it?
The Beatles' Abbey Road. I
Okay.
mean, yeah, there's really...
Okay.
First off, the Beatles are really one of the best bands of all time. And if you're really going to fight me on that, I live in New Jersey. Come and say that to my face.
You're going to have every Rolling Stones fan come here.
No, don't even get me down that road about which band's better. Because listen, even if you're not a fan of the Beatles, you have to appreciate what they've contributed to music. I mean, even the movie Yesterday kind of highlights that came out this summer about a world without the Beatles and how much of a hole there is without those songs. Every album of theirs is phenomenal. I mean, they are such a classic band. But Abbey Road, I think, really is up there among their best. I mean, of course, you can make the argument that Revolver or Rubber Soul or Sgt. Pepper's. I personally love the White Album, but Abbey Road, I think, really is up there as among the best. Also, it's significant because technically, Abbey Road was the last Beatles album. I say that of a huge asterisk because actually, Let It Be, or at the time, Get Back, as they're tentatively going to title it, was recorded first with the goal of, listen, we did all these crazy production concept albums. Let's go back to the roots. And they were doing it with Phil Spector. There was a lot of internal fighting to the point where the stuff that they started working on with Let It Be, they put to the side as like, you know what? No, let's start from scratch. Let's get George Martin back in here and let's do another album. So in theory, Abbey Road was the last album that they recorded together. Now, granted, after Abbey Road came out, they kind of revisited Let It Be and put the finishing touches to it. But technically, Abbey Road was the last record that they all recorded together, or as much as they did, considering that even during that time, they were pretty much at each other's throats. Mm-hmm. So in that regards, it's really one of the most significant Beatles albums. That's my opinion, at least, I guess. So...
It's good. No, no, it really is one of their best albums. I really think that, whenever the Beatles come into any discussion, one of the first things that you picture is the four guys walking across the crosswalk on Abbey Road.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's your picture and icon of the Beatles. I mean, how could this not be one of the best? And the songs on here do reflect that. I mean, a lot of what you think about when it comes to the Beatles comes from this album.
You mentioned about how iconic that album cover is. I mean, to give you an idea, on the day of its anniversary, when they actually took the photo, which I believe was August 8th of 2019, 50 years after that, fans were actually at the Abbey Road, and recreated the cover. Like, it was almost like a huge celebration just for the fact that photo was taken. Not even the album itself, but the fact that fans celebrated when that photo was taken. I think that just goes to show you how legendary it is.
Yeah, and they actually finished that session so fast. They had like 2 to 3 hours to kill. And this was even before the album was being recorded, because they had 2 to 3 hours before they were going to go do some recording. So the guys each did their own thing. John and Paul, they actually went around the corner to Paul's house. Ringo went shopping, and then a very George thing to do. He went to the zoo and he meditated.
Of course he would. Of course he would.
But yeah, I mean, it's very interesting, that we talk about iconic album covers. There are so many people that imitated this album cover for their own thing. I mean, one of the top things off the top of my head is that The Simpsons, on a cover of Rolling Stone, they did the crosswalk with each of the members of The Simpsons. But it's just one of those things that is so iconic and took so little effort that it's just mind-blowing.
So simple, yet so impactful.
Yes.
So in honor of such an impactful album, and the fact that it turns 50 this year, Matt and I are going to challenge ourselves with a really hard task. We have to each name the top 3 songs off of Abbey Road, and then we have to debate which are the final 3. Now, we should add that we are counting each song as its own thing. So, of course, there's the infamous 16-minute medley that involves a lot of great songs in it. But each song, we're not counting the 16 medley as its own song. Each song within that is its own individual track, which frankly made this even tougher on me.
Okay.
Because I, for the longest time, really do look at the 16-minute medley as its own piece of art. And it almost is kind of hard to imagine one song without this song next to it.
Yeah, but they're each their own individual tracks on the album.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, with that, I would like to volunteer to go first.
All right. You have fun with that.
All right. First song, Here Comes the Sun. It is, I think, hands down the best song George Harrison ever led and contributed to both Beatles and just music in general. It is a song that brings such wide range of emotions for me personally. Sorry, I'm going to get a little sidetracked here. I still remember, this was over 10 years ago. I was still in college. My mom had visited me on campus for, I think, parent weekend or whatever. So she came up and I could tell something was a little off. And then suddenly, she was planning on telling me at some point in the weekend, but then she ended up, because it was the same weekend that Paul Newman passed away. So that made her even, like, I noticed that she got even more emotional as soon as we heard that on the news. I'm like, whoa, okay, what's going on, Mom? And then that's when she led to me to say that my grandfather had pancreatic cancer. And it wasn't looking really good that he was going to be able to turn around. So that was a heavy heart. Like, that was really hard to hear. So we were in the car heading back to her hotel after she had just told me that, when on the radio comes on Here Comes the Sun. And it was such a beautiful moment, because it was one of those, all right, they're about to face some dark times, but it's okay. There's hope that their son will come back. That, you know, that it's just one of those songs that it doesn't matter what hardships you're going through at a certain moment, it can make you optimistic again. It can bring back a little bit of brightness. And I think that's just the power of music, when a song can do that, that no matter what is in front of you, it can just bring you back into focus. It can bring you back into a good memory or into a good feeling. And that song is just, it's a beautiful song that I still think stands the test of time and has that power. So that's my first pick. I swear, the rest of this list is not going to be that personal. I promise you. Second pick, She Came In Through the Bathroom Window. Now, I chose this because one of my favorite, like we mentioned, the 16-minute medley. One of my favorite moments about that is the transition from Sun King to Me, Mr. Mustard to Polythene Pam to then She Came In Through the Bathroom Window. And in my opinion, the first 3 songs really do beautifully create a build-up, a huge build-up to, as soon as Polythene Pam ends, and then Paul starts singing, She Came In Through the Bathroom Window. It's just the perfect explosion of a beautiful build-up that I had to, out of all the songs from that portion of the medley, at least, I had to pick that one because the build-up that made it worth it all. It was just that moment and hearing the band harmonize and the guitar licks. It's a beautiful, beautiful song. So that's my second pick. The third one is, I'm even kind of surprising myself with this choice, mainly because what makes the Beatles so great is the voices, is the melodies, is the harmonies. But this song is almost the exact opposite. It's the instrumental portion of the album. It's the end. It's where it's almost after Carry the Weight, which is a beautiful song, suddenly it just segues into the ultimate jam session of Paul, George, and John just trading guitar licks, trading guitar solos. And it's almost like and then Ringo doing his thing on the drums. It was knowing the history of the Beatles and how there was so much tension that it was the band that could just explode at any second. You can almost kind of hear that this is each band member bringing everything they got to the party, because it's almost like in the back of their head they know, all right, this is not just the end of the album, or the end of the medley. This is the end. This is the last thing we're ever going to do together in a studio. Now, granted, I'm sure they've recorded some other things here and there, but you just get a sense that this is like, all right, well, if this is the end, we got to bring it all out. And it's just them kind of, you can just almost picture them just each trading and going, whatever. I don't care if Paul, you write this, or John, if you write that. Let's just fucking go crazy. And then it just ends with the harmonizing, and in the end, the love. It's just like the perfect ending to not just an already epic and emotional album, but you could argue the perfect ending to the entire Beatles. So that's my 3. Here Comes the Sun, She Came In Through the Bathroom Window, and the end.
All right.
Ta-da.
Ta-da. Until he came with his list.
I don't know about that, but continue.
All right. So we're going to start out on my list with, I think, one of the tastiest and simplest licks that anybody has ever played. And you forget about it all the time with so much that's on this album and the rest of their catalog, that when you hear this, you're like, yeah, that was the Beatles. That was the late 60s. It is such a great, great lick that they play on this song. And the song itself is just straight up beautiful. If you've never heard, and I'm sure if you're listening to this, you've heard it and heard it many times, but sometimes you forget about it in all things Beatles. The song Something. Da, da, wah, wah,
something in the air.
Oh God. And then the lyrics, it's such a departure from the way that people describe women nowadays in songs. It is a very elegant, very light, very flowy, it's almost like a dream sequence. This whole album kind of has, with the exceptions here and there of certain tracks, a lot of it has this very dreamlike, ethereal quality to it. And this song is just, I think, the epitome of that. It is such a great song for such a slower Beatles song, but then that guitar lick just comes right back, and it's like, yeah, that's the Beatles. That's them, all right. I love that song.
Good song.
Second one. And I got to go with another really tasty lick that they lay on here. This time it's by Paul, and it's Come Together. The opening bass riff to this album sets the tone for everything. This song has been covered by tons of people. Aerosmith, Godsmack. There's so many others that just off the top of my head I can't remember, but there are a lot of people who have covered this song, and everybody who doesn't realize it's the Beatles, like, oh, it's such a great song. It's a cover, right? What? Yeah, it's a cover. Oh, Aerosmith didn't do it? No, the Beatles did it.
It's funny. I feel like the Aerosmith cover gets played so much on the radio,
right, that you forget that it's a Beatles song.
Which is like, but then as soon as you say, well, you forget that it's a Beatles song, it's like, well, wait, how could you forget it's a Beatles song? It's
right,
like,
exactly.
It's a classic song.
Right.
Like, you almost hate yourself for even saying, wait, did I really forget it was a Beatles song?
I think also because if you listen to the way that it's been done, except for like Aerosmith, you hear that they took what the Beatles did and put a little bit more production into it to make it sound a little bit bigger.
Yeah, it's not like they completely changed the game.
It's like
of the cover.
It's like the Beatles made a ham and cheese sandwich, but then Aerosmith and other people took that ham and cheese sandwich and made it into this gigantic sub with like lettuce, tomatoes, oil. They added so much more to it, but you forget that it all came from its very, very humble and simple beginning of just a ham and cheese sandwich. I don't think anybody else has compared a Beatles song to a sandwich.
Maybe not. But so yeah, great song though.
Yeah. So that's number 2. And number 3, you had it on your list. If I didn't add it to mine, I had to. It's Here Comes the Sun.
Yeah, you did.
I mean, this song is just...
You were just so moved by my personal story that you were like, I'm just going to forget about all the other songs.
Well, not only that, but I mean, there was a lot of just you could just tell that this is a song that is going to be one of those timeless classics. Like the first time you heard it, I don't care who you are, when you heard it, whether it was when the album released or you heard it last week, you know that this is one of just those timeless songs that's always going to be around. It's 50 years old. We're talking about it right now.
I can't believe it's 50 years old.
Right. We're talking about it like it just came out last week. Like we do 2 minutes to review episodes on songs. We're reviewing this song and this album like it came out last week.
I think, sidetrack for a little bit, you talked about how hard it is. I mean, just how it's almost hard to believe that it's 50 years old. This, whether or not you call this one of the best albums, it's so hard to deny this is not one of the best produced albums. I mean, George Martin is a god of production.
It's simple,
but it's just so clean and well
simple.
done.
And the Beatles have always had that level of production quality. Like they, in some interviews, when they got into their more intricate work on like Revolver and things like that, and you know, people also like the band members of Pink Floyd, they talk about studio performances. It's not just the performance in the studio between the band members. It's actually getting these things down.
Yeah.
And the actual performance of the people who are doing the producing also lends itself to this album. So with the way that this production quality is on this album, and particularly this song, I think it just speaks volumes to how right time, right people, right writing, you know, just a whole bunch of rights came together and it made one of the most iconic songs, sounds, and albums of all time.
Yeah. So we've come to an agreement
on one song.
I'd like to make a proposition.
Uh-oh.
It's time for Zach's proposition. So we both agree on Here Comes the Sun. I'd like the rest of the top three to be She Came In Through the Bathroom Window, because even though maybe it's not the best song like for songwriting styles, it does showcase the creativity the Beatles had. And I think it's also a great representation of the infamous medley.
Okay.
So She Came In Through the Bathroom Window. And then the third slot going to Come Together. It kind of kills me because I feel like we could have a whole debate about Something versus Come Together. But I think this list, Here Comes the Sun, is a great representation of George Harrison. So I was reading, John Lennon actually loved the song Something. I think he even named it as his favorite song off the album, and Paul considered it to be George's best work. But since we both agree on Here Comes the Sun, we have that, Here Comes the Sun, She Came In Through the Bathroom Window, and Come Together. Because, to your point, it is such an iconic song.
It is, and it's the opening bass riff of an iconic album. It is an iconic song off of an iconic album with an iconic riff by one of the biggest icons of all time in music.
You can also argue that it really captured the entire atmosphere at the time. It's the end of the 60s. There's a lot of tensions in the culture from the love and peace era. And, you know, tensions are starting to really grow more. And it's a final call for everyone to come together, let love reign, essentially. It's such a great anthem that is still so relevant.
Yeah.
So
I think we're in agreement on this.
All right. Just to recap, if you had to pick three of the best songs off of Abbey Road, we choose Here Comes the Sun, She Came In Through the Bathroom Window, and Come Together.
Right now.
Over me. Do you agree? Well, come together on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, at Epic Footnote. Let us know what you think. Tell us that we're wrong. Choose your three best songs off of Abbey Road. And we hope to hear from you soon.
We want you so bad.
Oh, man.
One last part.
She's so heavy.
Over me.
You just mixed two songs.
I know, that's what I do.
This is why we need to end this episode right now. Thanks, everyone.
Take it easy, guys.